Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the CISSP, commonly known as a CISSP. So this is a cybersecurity exam that is often referred to as a gold standard certification. And after passing the exam and becoming certified, it opens up so many doors in cybersecurity. Recently, there has been a change and update to the CISSP exam. So I'm going to be covering the changes, and I'm also going to be giving you a roadmap to take and pass the CISSP exam in 5 easy steps. And I've put together a Notion page that is completely free for your use and is included within my Cyberbrain Notion template that is linked in the description, so you can check that out. So yeah, let's get into it. An important thing about the CISSP exam is people might try and put you off or say you need to wait till you're senior, have a significant amount of experience before attempting it. I completely disagree. You should believe in yourself and you should take the exam early in your career. The CISSP exam covers pretty much everything within cybersecurity, very surface level, and gives you a high level overview, an overarching understanding of how things work. So even if you're early on in your career, even if you're just starting out in cybersecurity, I would recommend watching some of the CISSP content or buying the book and at least reading it once, even if you're not planning to take the exam, because it gives you so much understanding and knowledge within cybersecurity, and it's something that you will need later on. No knowledge is wasted when you're learning from it. This will be fundamental to your understanding of how things work. So I recommend taking the exam early on. I literally started studying for the CISSP 1 year into my career, and typically people go and attempt the exam 5, 10, 15, 20 years into their career, and that's normally when you see. I've seen so many people that have started to look and study for the exam after about 10 years in the industry because it's classed as senior. And if you look at Paul Jeremy's study roadmap, as you can see, CISSP sits quite highly here within cybersecurity. So people have this assumption that it's a very high level, senior, take it later on in life when you're ready. And I would say take it early on, just so you understand how things work. And if you're not ready to take it early on, at least begin to study and look at the things in it early on, just so you have that understanding, because it will be useful regardless. Even before passing the exam, it made me a better professional, made me a better consultant, it made me better in cybersecurity because I was learning so much useful knowledge that I was using and picking up on. So the whole process is what you should focus on, and start that process early on. Begin to learn and engage with the content as early as you can in your career, and if possible, take it within your first 5 years and then specialize later on. People tend to specialize in cybersecurity in one column of cybersecurity and then learn the broad overarching concepts later on. I think this is a wrong approach. I think you should begin with the broad overarching concepts of cybersecurity just to understand all the different areas. And then as you develop in your career, that is when you specialize and become an expert in one specific area, such as networking or cloud or development or architecture or whatever it is that you want to specialize in. So yeah, if you're entry level or you're a beginner in cybersecurity, trust me, just buy the book or watch the free videos and begin to learn the overarching concepts, because that will set the tone for your career and will give you the understanding of how cybersecurity functions as a collective and all the different areas within it. So definitely buy the CISSP book and start to learn it early on. If you can't afford the book, just watch the free videos. So ISC², the organization that creates and maintains a CISSP, has released an announcement this week that there is going to be a change to the CISSP exam that will be effective on the 15th of April in 2024. Now, the reason they have made this change is the CISSP exam and ISC² have a continual triennial cycle of review of the exam and the content, and what they do is conduct a job task analysis, and what that essentially means is they are reviewing the contents of the exam against the skills that are required in the industry and what's happening within cybersecurity and tech in general. They also collect data and information from experimental questions within the exam itself that people take and use that as input too. So there's 2 changes, one minor and one quite major in my opinion. So the first change is the weighting within the domains has changed ever so slightly. So domain 1, security and risk management, has had an increase in the weighting for it. So it used to be worth 15% of the exam, now it's worth 16%. And domain 8, software development security, has had a slight decrease from 11% to 10%. So there's a minor change in the weighting in the domains in the exams that won't affect the content of the exam too much, but it's just something to be wary of. The major change in the CISSP exam is the actual time for the exam and the amount of questions that you will see. Previously, you would take anywhere between 125 and 175 questions. Now it's anywhere between 100 and 150, and that is for the CAT version of the exam, and CAT stands for Computerized Adaptive Testing, which essentially means that the question molds its difficulty and the questions you will see depending on how you've answered the previous questions, and you can't go back and change any answers. So basically, if you get to 100 questions and the exam and the algorithm thinks that you've got a 95% chance of passing at 100 questions or 125, depending on when you take it, then you'll automatically pass. However, if you're slightly off the percentage or passing mark, then it will show you more and more questions while it scores you, and when it thinks you've reached the passing mark and you don't need to be shown any more questions, you will automatically pass or fail. And failure is very similar. If you get to 100 or 125 questions and the algorithm has determined that you've got a 95% chance of failing, then you will immediately fail. So it's a very clever and different type of testing, because the testing adapts to how you've answered the questions and changes the questions you will see based on that. Now, I took the exam this year and alhamdulillah, I passed 125 questions, meaning that the exam did not need to show me any more questions to determine if I would pass the exam. So that's kind of how it works. But I know people that have got to like 140 or 150 questions before passing, and that's just dependent on how they've performed. But yeah, the CISSP isn't graded, so even if you pass immediately at 100 or 125, depending on when you take it, it's just a pass-fail. You don't get A stars or Bs or Cs or different grades. So the main objective is just to pass the exam. It's not necessarily graded. Now, one of the major changes in the exam is it's actually gone down from 4 hours to 3 hours. Because they've reduced the amount of questions within there, they've taken some time off the exam. So that's just something to be aware of, that if you're taking this exam after April in 2024, you have less time than you did previously, but you also have less questions. So that makes sense. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, I've been studying for the exam, or I've bought certain books. Are they out of date now? Does this affect my study plan or materials that I should be using? And the short answer to that is no. The ISC² exams are very experiential and include experience-based questions or practical knowledge-based questions. If you've studied sufficiently with any book, even one of the older ones, you should feel confident and not let any of that hold you back. Now, a very important point about the CISSP exam is, in passing the exam, you can essentially be in two states. You can be actually certified as a CISSP, or you can be a CISSP associate. So a CISSP associate is somebody who has passed the exam but has not met the experience requirement yet to become fully certified and go through the CISSP certification process. You actually need to have 5 years of information security experience in one or more of the relevant domains. You need to be endorsed by another CISSP professional. You can be endorsed and go through this through ISC² through other means. So if you don't know anyone that's a CISSP and you want to be certified, then there are other ways. But typically after 5 years of experience, you'll probably meet someone in the industry who's willing to endorse you. And even though they say 5 years, it's important to note that other education or certification or degrees can actually waiver 1 year of the experience requirement. And also, to become certified, you need to continually pay an annual maintenance fee to ISC², and you have to complete continuing education and training, and these are known as CPEs. So there's a certain amount of hours, courses, learning, etc. that you have to do every year on a 3-year cycle to actually maintain your certification. Otherwise, your certification will lapse and it will not be valid anymore. And typically what you see is people within the industry who've been in the industry for a very long time will allow their certification to lapse because after a certain point, their experience and their knowledge just carries them through and they don't necessarily need to have a shiny certificate to prove themselves. In my experience, people who let their certification lapse already have 15-20 years of experience and lots of contacts within the industry or work in a job they're completely satisfied with, and they don't need to actually maintain their certification to keep their job, but some other jobs will require you to continually maintain it for the duration of your employment, so that's an important note. Now, when it comes to the pricing of the exam, it's about $750 to book your exam, or about £600 if you're in the UK, and typically your employer will pay for this. If you're employed within information security, IT and tech, and you want to upskill, you normally would have a training budget allocated to you to allow you to pay for the exam, so I wouldn't worry about the cost too much. However, if you're paying for it yourself, which isn't a bad option either, it's a good investment in your career, and it's the best investment you can make to invest in yourself. It's not as expensive as some of the other courses you'll see in cybersecurity, like some of the SANS courses, which are like $8,000 each, and it's just ridiculous prices. But they're great courses, great certifications to have, but just cost a stupid amount. Now, when you want to book the exam, it's a pretty clear process, and I would advise booking your exam as early as possible in your study journey, just to give you a deadline or a date to work towards. Of course, you can always reschedule it, as long as you do it within an appropriate time frame and not the day before, because you lose your money and exam slot. But what you do is you go to the website, you click on register for the exam, and it's pretty straightforward. You create an account, you provide some basic details, you pay the fee, or the employer pays the fee for you, and then you'll be transferred to the Pearson VUE website. Pearson VUE are essentially approved testing centers, and you will have to pick one of the approved testing centers locally to you, and then you'll get your confirmation details, your email, all that kind of good stuff, and you know when to show up. I do advise you take a trip and try and make it towards your testing center, just to know how long it takes, where to park, or what public transport to take to get there, etc., etc. So you're not actually stressing or thinking about that before your actual exam. So definitely a week or two before your actual exam, make sure you take a trip to the testing center, just so you know the route and where to go and all those kind of details. So when it comes to the retake policy, it's pretty interesting, because previously you'd have to pay the full $750 or £600 for every single exam. But I think right now, as of November 2023, they've got a peace of mind protection thing on, where essentially you can pay an extra $200 to get an extra attempt if you do fail. But it's important to note that you have to wait 30 days if you have failed to take the exam again before you can resit. If you fail again, you have to wait 60 days. If you fail again, you have to wait 90 days, and you're only allowed 4 attempts in a year. But yeah, the peace of mind protection might be something to purchase if you're not too confident that you'll pass on the first time and you just want the experience of sitting the exam, or $200 isn't really a problem for you or your employer. It's probably worth taking that. After actually passing and becoming a member of ISC², whether an associate or an actual certified CISSP person, there's quite a lot of benefits that you get from the website. Honestly, there's a whole section for members and the benefits you can get, and you get everything from free training called skill builders, CPE opportunities, webinars, volunteering opportunities and networking events. You get discounts and some free resources, and you essentially become part of the ISC² community and have like a local chapter that you're part of. And to be honest, the training and education isn't bad. I took one earlier this year about DevSecOps and learned a ton, and I was so surprised that that content was free, but that's only available to members, and if you're not a member, you would have had to pay for that. Now, to give you a study roadmap to acquire the knowledge required to pass the CISSP, I'm going to be talking about this in 5 easy steps. Now, I've made these steps easy to understand, and it's important you follow this kind of methodology when you're studying for the CISSP to really get the right knowledge in the right order, as I believe doing this will just save you some time. So pay close close attention. So step one is you need to understand the mentality that you need to pass the CISSP, the perspective that you are coming from when you're answering the questions. Within cybersecurity, if you're sitting an exam that is like an auditing exam, like the CISSP, or you're sitting the CISSP, the exact same question with the exact same wording will have different answers, because in one exam, you're answering the question from the perspective of an auditor, and within the CISSP, you're answering the question from the perspective of a security manager or CISO. So you have to understand the level of thinking and how you're approaching the particular question that you're being shown. So to do this, there's one video that you have to watch. It's by Kelly Handahan, and this video is called Why You Will Pass CISSP, and you will have to watch that video quite a few times throughout your learning journey just to remind yourself. She talks about the perspective, the mentality, the type of thinking you need to have when you approach the questions you are shown. So that needs to be done in step one early on, just so you understand the mentality needed before you progress with your studies, because you don't want to learn something from the wrong perspective, like a network security engineer or an incident responder or an auditor. Because doing exams for those areas, you will answer it completely different than you would for the CISSP. Now, the second thing is to get an overview of the content. So right now, you haven't bought anything. This is just to understand the content within the exam and the domains and what they cover. So what I would recommend is watching destination, certifications, CISSP, mind map videos. These videos are great. They're animated, they're colorful, they're easy to understand. And what they do is give you like a broad, high-level stroke of all the content and talk about what's contained within them and some of the knowledge that you will need. And this covers the exam end to end. Literally every single domain will be discussed and talked about. Now, watch it without taking any notes the first time, just so you can understand it at a high level, and later on you can dive into the details and take more notes as you progress through the content. But I think if you do this early on, just to get that broad stroke overview of what's contained within the exam, that's going to be essential in your first step. So the mentality, a broad stroke overview of the whole content, that's what's needed in your first step. Now, the second step is to purchase one of the official CISSP books. And when I say official, they can be endorsed by ISC², but there are some other great books that aren't necessarily official or endorsed, but will be enough to pass. However, don't get too hung up on this. There are so many different CISSP books. I would just buy one and stick to that. Buying multiple books covering the same content with slightly different wording or pictures or images makes no difference. You buy one book and you stick at it. I personally use the ISC² CISSP study guide, and I bought a bundle where it came with the practice questions. We'll get onto that later. But there's also the all-in-one guide, the CBK. There's a ton of other different books you can buy. That's my personal recommendation, but do your own research and pick a book that's best for you. But I would say this is enough to pass the exam, so don't overcomplicate things and overthink this step. The actual book you buy, as long as it's one of the more popular ones that are recommended, that contain all the content and it is actually up to date, don't buy one of the older books, then you'll be fine. And at this stage, what you want to do is read through the whole book, take notes. There's specific methods that will make it easier for you to do that I will make another video about, but that's more on like productivity and learning. And for me, that's really important. You have to learn how to learn and how to absorb information, but I'll make another video about that in the future. But for now, buy the book, work your way through it, take a ton of notes, do the questions at the end of the chapters, do the exercises, go back over it, go over your weak points, etc, etc. Now, at this stage, you want to split up the amount of content you're taking into the questions you're doing. There's a ratio of the amount of questions you should be doing to the amount of content you are taking in at various stages in these steps. So to begin with, you're going to be doing a lot of reading, a lot of note taking, a lot of thinking time to understand the content, and just doing some questions at the end of the chapters, as opposed to going heavy down the question route. And of course, if you have experience and you are actually an expert in one of the areas, you'll grasp things a lot quicker. It's worth just a quick skim read just to know the CISSP style, but you won't necessarily need to deep dive and learn things again. Now, step 3 is just practice questions, and I would use the book in the bundle to begin with, and also go back over the questions you've already done and just highlighting weak areas and understanding what domains are weak. At this stage, you're not doing difficult practice questions. We'll come to that later. So the practice questions you're doing at this stage are the ones is out of the practice tests within the CISSP book. Those questions are actually different to the ones you'll see in the exam, but they're very important to do. So these questions are testing the knowledge you've absorbed from studying the content, which is very important, but they don't cross the domains and link ideas together as some of the other questions that we'll cover later on. But these questions are essentially specific to the areas you've studied and the content you're looking at, but aren't necessarily mapped and reflective of the style of the real questions you will see. So it's a mistake that people make often, is that they stop here and they pass these questions and they think they've got it and then they'll fail. The reason being is these questions aren't realistic to the actual exam and won't be enough to give you the knowledge to pass alone, but they're important in your learning journey. So definitely take them, use the questions out of this CISSP book, practice tests and exams, and try to learn as much as you can, and then go back over your content and revise your weak areas. Now the fourth step, what I would recommend, is actually revisiting Kelly Hand-to-Hand's video, going back over the mind map domains and the destination certification videos, and also watching a lot of Prab Nayar's content on the CISSP and the mentality and the approach he takes. Now he is so good at explaining how to approach the questions, why they are wrong in detail, why they are right in detail, which is very important because you learn so much from actually making mistakes and you need to understand why you are wrong. One word in a question can change the answer. You can have like a whole paragraph of a question and literally one or and or on can change the whole trajectory of how you approach that question. So Prab Nayar is very good at understanding that and teaches the CISSP and has a very in-depth knowledge of the CISSP content. So definitely watch him. His videos are free and they're pretty funny and cool. I think he calls them coffee shots, and they're quite short and you can take them in little bite-sized chunks. So yeah, watch Kelly Hand-to-Hand's video again, learn the mentality, watch the destination certification videos again, this time probably take notes, and you could even buy a book or two to help you to soak in some information while you're doing all of this. There's two that I recommend. There's one that's called Thinking Like a Manager and Destination CISSP, a concise guide. Now step 5 is your final step, and this is going to be the bit that you really need to focus on, and this is going to be where you're increasing the difficulty of the questions you're taking. So this is where you purchase questions that are actually very difficult, and these are more reflective of the CISSP exam, and in my opinion actually harder than the questions in the CISSP exam. Now the question set I used was actually Study Notes and Theory by Luke Ahmed, and he actually has so many videos and other things to do with CISSP, so it's not just questions you're purchasing access to a lot of course content, a lot of explanation videos, a lot of breakdowns, and also very complex questions. And I'm not even joking when I tell you these questions are harder than the real exam. I literally was failing every single exam that I took with Study Notes and Theory. I don't even think I passed one. I would literally score 50 or 60% on every single exam that I took with him, and then literally the week later I passed the exam with top marks immediately at 125. And I've heard a lot of people say similar things. So if you're doing the Study Notes and Theory questions, don't think just because you're getting low scores that you're necessarily going to fail. What you need to do is take and fail the exams and understand why you went wrong, where you went wrong, and read the explanations. Honestly, the questions are massive, and each answer will have a complete breakdown of why that was wrong, why that was right. You need to read everything and understand it. He's also a network security engineer by trade, so that will give you a lot of technical and networking and architecture knowledge learning from someone like him, which definitely helped me because those were my weak points at the time. So yeah, another really popular exam question set is a bolt-on exam questions. I won't say too much on these because, to be honest, I didn't really take them myself, so I don't really want to comment on them. But what I will say is that they're highly rated, highly respected. A lot of people I know have actually used these questions to pass the exam instead of the Luke Ahmed questions, and they are quite difficult. So I would recommend one of these two options, which will be linked in the step 5 of my Notion page. Now, just some last thoughts on the exam. It is a difficult exam and can be quite challenging. Don't underestimate it. However, it's life-changing within the cybersecurity industry. It creates so many opportunities and levels up your career, and literally as soon as you pass, You'll have recruiters reaching out to you on LinkedIn if you've got it set up in the right way and you've obviously thought about how you're marketing yourself. So yeah, if you're thinking of taking the exam, then good luck. I really do hope you pass. I hope this video has given you the information you need to pass. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. And if you want to watch my video where I talk about other aspects you need to get into cybersecurity, then yeah, click on this video here and subscribe to my channel.